Hey everybody, it's Ben. Go Ben. And go Yasser. And good Yasser. And go Gasser. And all that stuff. Um, yeah, I slept late today, although for me it was early. So the game had already ended when I woke up. Let's see, get rid of this. All right. Got rid of all the nonsense. Not only did I get sunburned at the game yesterday, as you can see from my forehead, my chessboard and my shirt got sunburned also. Luckily, my microphone was wearing a hat, so the top of the microphone didn't get sunburned, but the rest of it did, as you can see, and so forth. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at game 11 of the World Championship. Jan is white, Ding is black. They repeated Spanish Ruy Lopez. Ding has played a6 and knight f6. And this game he played a6. And we've seen this before. D3. Of course, you can play rook e1. And Jan has also played bishop takes c6 in this match. I don't think Jan's played rook e1 yet. Rook e1 used to be the only move they played. Now they play every move. Okay, b5, because in this position, as I've said in previous videos, white's threatening to take the knight and then take on e5. So b5, d6. Okay, and they had this position before, and white played c3. So in this position, when black plays d6, black is defending his pawn on e5, which was already defended, but now he can play knight a5 and get the bishop pair. So typically, white either moves his a pawn or his c pawn, so his bishop can retreat after knight a5. And you could play c3, a3, or a4. All the moves have been played. I think he played c3 earlier in the match, and today he played a3. Okay, and typically when black plays for queenside expansion, he castles first. But Ding just played knight a5 and c5 right away, which is fine. Knight c3. Now, knight c3, the idea behind mixing a3 and knight c3 is instead of playing for c3 and d4 or playing for a4, white is going to play bishop g5, bishop takes f6, and dominate the d5 square, which we have seen earlier in the match, very early in the match. I think it was game 1 or 3 or both. So white's going to get rid of this knight and dominate d5 because black has weakened d5. Okay, and again, instead of castling, Ding protects d5 a little more. He's hoping that white trades bishops so that d5 isn't weak anymore. But that's not what's going to happen. Okay, so white played bishop g5, and he's hoping that black trades bishops. If black plays bishop takes a2, white would take with the rook. Although actually, he'd probably throw this in first. Bishop f6, rook a2. You might as well throw that in first. And then you can't stop knight d5. White has a nice knight, and black's bishop isn't very good. So white has an advantage here. And also, after bishop f6, if you decide to go here, hoping for bishop takes e7, bishop takes g7 wins a pawn and prevents black from castling on the king side. Yeah. So what black doesn't want to play bishop takes a2 because black doesn't want to cede control of the d5 square, frankly. Okay, so finally he castled. Jan played bishop f6, and knight to d5. So white did everything he wanted, and black got all his pieces developed and castled. And in this position, instead of having this bishop, sort of hang around here, not doing much, and in one of the games, if you recall, Ding game that he lost, he in one relope has played bishop d8, bishop b6, and got his bishop on this diagonal here. Okay, but in this game he chose a different way of played g6, and he wants to put his bishop back on g7 where the knight's not attacking it, and perhaps later play f5, or as happened in the game, play c4 later, blocking the bishop from defense of the d5 knight, which then the knight on a5 actually makes some sense. It's doing something. So white has a tiny advantage here because white has the d5 square, but black's fully developed and has a lot of pawns, on the fourth rank, taking up space. Okay, white played queen d2. Thanks, viciously buoyant. Now this is a direct threat. The queen is overworked now. It's defending the a5 knight and the f6 bishop. So if it's white's turn to move, white plays knight takes check, queen takes, and then takes the knight, hanging knight on a5. So this is the first actual threat of the game where if it was white to move, white's just winning. So black has two obvious moves. He can move his knight or he can move his bishop. And they're both fine. He moved his bishop. Since he's going to move his bishop anyway, he's not going to keep it there where it's attacked. His point of g6 was to play bishop g7. It's not clear if this knight's going to go here or not, or if it's going to stay there. Okay, so now this is the tough part of chess because both sides did what they wanted. Now what do you do? What's the continuation? And the answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows what either side should do here. And probably that depends on what the opponent does. So black doesn't have to do anything because it's white's move. Then when white does something, black has to meet it. And Jan did play the engine move. He played knight g5. So he's thinking about taking this bishop and then moving his knight, and then the e6 pawn is weak. I'm not even sure if that's a good idea. And he's also thinking that if black plays bishop h6, which looks good because it pins the knight to the queen, it doesn't really pin the knight to the queen because I can take, and I'm attacking your queen. And if you take my knight and take my other knight, white's just winning a lot of material. White's a pawn up, and he has a fork. So that's terrible. And so you'd have to take the queen. I take your queen, obviously, frankly. You would take back. And this position is better for white. We have opposite bishops, but my bishop and knight just totally dominate d5. This knight's silly here. It's probably not losing, but it's no fun. Thanks, viciously buoyant. Thanks, two times over. Karam Jalokal and Wes 118. Thanks for starting the train. Okay, so bishop h6 is a bad move. That's just helping white. Okay, now in this position, Ding played an explosive move, which the engine doesn't like very much. Thanks, Xenoid, 400 bits. This move is quite forcing and forces a reckoning and so forth, and more tombstone quotes. So black could play very simply. Black could move his knight back here, and then probably move his bishop back here if white doesn't take it, and just say, okay, I'm fine. But instead, Ding wanted to force matters, and he played c4, which is explosive, and that blocks the bishop. So now black technically could take the knight, and then the pawn takes, and that's not what white wants. White wants a bishop or a knight on d5. And, c4 gives the knight a job, so that's good. Okay, so white played the computer recommended way. Knight takes bishop, and then back to e3, putting tremendous pressure on this c4 pawn. And if the c4 pawn moves, like you take, I can throw in bishop takes e6 check. And it looks like there's a lot of pressure on black's position, because there's a lot of pressure on black's position. And it's sort of hanging by a thread, and the bishop on g7 isn't doing very much. Okay, now that I've said the bishop on h6 isn't doing very much, thanks Alt F4 Pro for gifting 5 subs. You're the best. He played bishop h6. Because his bishop's not very good, as I pointed out, and the knight is, being annoying. So he wants to get rid of the knight. Oh, give me the knight. Okay. Now this is the critical part of the game where Jan decided to force matters instead of chill. And the engine just wants to chill. The engine's like, unpin your knight with queen e2, and then play rook d1 later, and, put pressure on c4, and white's slightly better. At the moment, Stockfish 15 on depth 38 says white is 0.6 better. Okay, whatever that means. White has a target on c4, white has a target on e6, and I think in Astana, if you go about a mile south of the playing site, there's a target there also. So, if he wants to go to target, he can. That's why, everything's red, because target. Okay. So it looks like Jan prefers Walmart. Anybody who prefers Walmart, but what are you going to do? Maybe he's trying to save money. So he decided to, as we say at the top level, not that I'm allowed to quote the top level, because that's not me, he decided to vacuum the board. Viciously Buoyant and West gave 100 bits each. Okay, so he played the move rook to d1, and he says, I'm attacking this, this can be attacked, and when I take on c4, I'm attacking d6 also. So this puts more pressure on black's position. And black played what used to be called a mysterious rook move. It's not a move a lot of people would think of, but this is the World Championship, and it is the engine move. The move is rook b8. So everything that white does where he's trying to win by force, he's taking on c4, and he's taking on d6, and he's taking everything. And so if white's going to take on c4, and black takes back with the pawn at some point, the rook on b8 is quite well placed. And this is where the game sort of ends for me. White can play for a win. He did, but okay. There's playing for a win, and there's playing for a win. White could do nothing and just play queen e2. Okay, unpinning his knight. And just say, okay, these pieces, all right. And white just builds pressure and doesn't do anything right away. Thanks, Cage Bruno, for $2.99. And again, the engine says white's ahead like 0.6 by just waiting and hoping that black makes a mistake at some point, or that white can build the pressure further and get a good position. Queen e2 puts more pressure on c4. It unpins the knight, and it lines up the rook with the queen, if that ever helps. And what the engine wants to do with black is take the knight and then play queen b6, or I don't like rook b7. Okay, and white, white's a little better because there's pressure here on these pawns. Probably a draw with correct play, but okay, I'd rather have white. And Jan, instead of slowly building and not doing very much, which I would imagine like Magnus would do, he vacuumed the board. And somebody in the chat before thanks for the night, thanks for the sub. Somebody, when I was doing the pre-roll before the stream started, before I came on, said I was watching the game and I left for 30 minutes and I came back and there were no pieces on the board. Yeah, that'll happen at Super GM level. So he took on c4, and this just forces a line where everything's traded. Okay, so knight takes c4. You can't take with the knight because it's pinned. You can't play queen takes d6 because the knight defends it. So you have to play bishop takes. Pawn takes. Now the rook is attacking the b pawn. Even here, the engine would like to play queen e2, but it says it's equal now. So he just took this. And, you know, if you take all your opponent's pawns, you figure that's pretty good. Thanks, Pierre Abelard. And they just traded everything. Everything was traded. Okay. And this position is like symmetrical and same number of pawns and same everything. And technically, white's better because it's white's move. But that's technical. So, okay, he took this. And they just kept taking each other's pawns. Okay, now this pawn could get dangerous. Okay, black makes 2 moves in a row, he wins. So white's like, no. Okay, takes. And white is going to be able to win this pawn and be up a pawn, and that endgame is drawn. But because of the way the kings and the rooks are, we actually can't keep our pawn. If we could keep our pawn, we could play for a win with our extra pawn. Okay, because white's winning a pawn. And black says, I'm going to check you forever. Where are you going to hide? Well, you can't run your king over here. You can't run that way because you lose. You got to stay near your pawns. You can't block with the rook. If you could block with the rook, then your rook's not attacking this pawn. Like if you could go here, I play rook a4 or something, or rook a5 or rook a3. That doesn't win. So what he did is the only way to stop the checks is to hide his king here and play g3. That way there's no more checks for black. Or you could just repeat and draw. Okay, but if white wants to win, because white's winning the e5 pawn, okay, so I would try to win the e5 pawn. So that's what he did. Now he played rook here, attacking the pawn. If you play g3, I take the h pawn. If you play king here, I check again. So white did what I said he would do. Now if you play rook check, finally I play g3, and then I take the pawn. I'm a pawn up, okay, which is also a draw. But black has better. Black played rook e2, very accurate. Rook takes e5, and now king f7. And this king's over here now. So I'm going to play king f6, attacking your rook, and then I'm going to take your pawn. The truth hurts. And that's what happened. And you can't play king e... I mean, you can play king f3. You don't want to. I take, and okay, this is completely drawn, but obviously white's not better. So they just repeated. And I guess if white wants to play for a win, he could play king f3, which he did not do. And I assume I could take on g2. Can I? What's the engine say? Yeah, the engine says I can take on g2. Well, you don't want to give this pawn away. So I guess you take. And then this is just completely drawn. Nobody's better here. So they just repeated like this. And you're not allowed to agree to a draw before move 40. And this is move 39. But you are allowed to claim a draw. So if black plays king f6, he can claim a draw. Now let me hold on a second here. King here. Oh, the king was on f7. Okay, so this is 1. This is 2. And this is 3. So this position's occurred for the 3rd time. And so forth. So if you remember yesterday's game, I said that one side played 99.5, the other side played 99.7. This game was similar. The engine says, or the cap score, whatever, says white played 99.5 and black played 99.6. So these are pretty high level, well played games. The games end in a draw because both sides play over 99. And the only move you could argue was a mistake is in this position when black played c4, which, I mean, basically led the game to being a draw because eventually Jan took on c4 and they traded everything. So that's the only move I think an engine would not play is c4 because it gives white a little advantage. And then, you know, Jan vacuumed the board instead of playing really slowly and not doing very much and not getting much of an advantage. And, I mean, almost went to king versus king again. But they repeated here instead of playing rook and 2 versus rook and 2. So that was a very good game. And Ding drew relatively comfortably. he had a little work to do. You could see the players had a lot of time on their clock, so they weren't particularly perturbed, and so forth. Okay, so typically we have a lecture tonight at 6, which we are. It's Paul Morphy Part 4. You can sign up on Zoom. You can go to my Twitter for more information, or you can type !class. And then sometimes I stream afterwards. However, we're going to stream today earlier. So in the next hour, I'm going to stream my normal stream with Karen. So we'll be back here in about an hour or less, possibly less, and do our 2-3 hour stream. All right, I hope you like that game. It was very well played. It wasn't the most exciting game, but what are you going to do? The truth hurts. Let's see. Okay. We will raid that person. Okay, see you guys in about an hour or less. Bye, everybody. Thanks for donating and supporting the stream.